Hey everyone, this amazing ESO Network show is brought to you by our fine sponsor, Amazon.com. Please remember to shop Amazon for all your geeky needs, no matter what time of the year it is. All you need to do is go to esopodcast.com/ESO Amazon, or click on the Amazon banner on the ESO Network webpage to go to our e-store. It's the best way to shop and the best way to support this program, and it doesn't cost you anything extra. Okay, that's enough of me babbling for now. Now on with your regular scheduled show.
Are you ready to rock?
This is where the world of pop culture and talk collide.
Hey, how you doing, kids?
This is the Adam and JP Show.
Hey, look, there's Adam.
Hey, I am here, you know.
I'm J. Patrick. And welcome to the most self-grandizing episode of the Adam and JP Show in history.
Yeah.
Grandizing, maybe a bad word. Absorbed? The most self-absorbed episode.
No. I mean, we're just telling stories of things that have happened to us in the past 12 months.
12-ish.
Yeah.
12, 15 months.
Yeah. Not self-absorbed, just a look into, I think most people, we have a lot of friends that listen that are podcasters, and that's cool, but some that aren't. And people are intrigued by the culture of podcasting, and maybe they want to hear some stories behind-the-scenes things.
Okay, yeah. Well, what we can do is we can kind of tell our podcast story.
Yeah.
We don't have to tell the very beginning because we've talked about that a lot.
Right.
Like when we first started.
Yeah, no need for that.
But let's go for, if you want to hear that story, go back to every fifth episode in the archives. But let's go to was it 2012? Was it 2012 we did the radio show?
Yes, when that began. Was
that 2012, right? Or 2013?
2013. 2012 was a different event we had planned that year.
Oh, that's right.
2011, the show begins. 2012, our first good idea happened.
Yeah.
2013, the radio show began.
2013, very beginning of 2013, around this time of year.
Yeah.
We came back from a long hiatus, a long, well-deserved hiatus.
As it so often happens.
And we renamed our show.
Yeah.
We went from the original name, which was the show, to the Adam and JP Show. Because we were going to radio, and it made sense to, that was a radio show name, the Adam and JP Show.
Yeah, it sounds right.
And I don't think there's any left on the feed now, at least on the iTunes feed, of the old radio show. But we would post like a 2-hour radio show, basically, plus the podcast every week. And
that was a lot of recording.
That was a lot of recording. And then we did that for about a year, roughly. We did the radio show on Murfreesboro, Tennessee. Murfreesburger. We were on at like 4 o'clock in the morning on Saturdays. Never live. Always pre-recorded because I'm not getting my ass out of bed at 3 o'clock in the morning to go do a show.
2 or 2:30, man. That was a good drive from here.
On an AM station. I have before, but that was early in my career.
Yeah.
So we did that. And then after we left WGNS, we played around with like doing multiple podcasts, which the idea being to kind of create a brand, I guess.
Yeah, different little branches and arms to bring it all back to the Adam and JP Show.
Right.
Yeah.
Which was, once again, an incredible amount of work.
We figured if we had different podcasts on different topics and subjects, a little more concentrated to get that crowd in, bring it all back here to the Adam and JP Show where it's all inclusive.
Right. And that's how Collection Connection happened.
Right. And
that was in 2014.
And thankfully that's still going on.
Yeah.
Has it been 3 years almost? Wow. Wow.
2014. Is that when you started?
Yeah, because, I did almost a year of 8-Bit Adam. That stopped in June 2015. So,
yeah.
Yeah, wow.
So we're coming up on 3 years for Collection Connection?
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Or is it 2?
It's 3. Like, I stopped 8-Bit Adam, which that and Collection Connection started at the same time, almost a year after I began it.
So we...
wow.
So Josh came on board to start doing Collection Connection. Still going. Go listen. Another part 2 of a 3-part episode, 3-part series about Spider-Man.
And he just got brand new, nice equipment. I mean, he's in for the long haul.
Oh, he is down.
Yeah.
He is down like a clown. And so we brought Collection Connection on. We each kind of branched off and did our own thing. And then that was, once again, an incredible amount of work. And so those kind of faded away. And we just kind of stuck with doing the Adam and JP Show twice a week, which works because now we can sit down once a week and knock out 2 episodes. So last year,
I feel like, by the way, we're sitting down our children and telling them we're going to get a divorce.
Yeah, it just kind of feel that way.
So last year when your father got the new job.
Yeah. You remember when your dad bought the fancy car and he wasn't at home at night? He had made a new friend.
He wasn't at Captain D's every night. D stood for Denise.
Remember last year when your dad went out for cigarettes and didn't come home? Well, we found him.
He's alive and much happier.
He's not coming home. I remember, when Deadpool was in theaters, which was around Valentine's Day.
Yeah.
I remember that's when I started texting with a friend of mine and I still want to guard names and companies. So I was texting with a friend of mine who is, one of the higher ups of a major radio company in America. Is that safe enough?
Yeah, you could say, yeah.
Like, if you Google, there's like three.
Don't give it out.
2-3 major radio companies. This
Yeah.
is one of them. And, he's a muckety muck high up in this, he's always like tweeting out that where he's flying for an award show here. And we used to work together and we stayed friends. And so I was like, hey, this whole podcast thing, when are you guys going to realize that's the future of radio? You're not taking advantage. You aren't producing any podcasts that anybody's aware of. This is something you should really look into. And we started texting back and forth and had like genuine conversations. And he agreed. This, podcast is the future of media. I mean, what is it? Didn't iTunes just recently announce the billionth download?
Oh, really?
They had recently had their billionth download on the podcast app or from the podcast site. So, so we start having these conversations, and he sets up a meeting with who turns out to be the third most powerful person in radio in the country. And it's going to be you and I, and we're going to go in, and we're going to pitch what we could do to basically help them set up a podcast arm of their company. And, I come to you and I tell you, so what are your thoughts when I come to you and tell you, hey, this guy, we find him online, I explain who he is and you look him up and all that. We're going to meet with this guy about possibly working together.
Pretty much what happened. I thought they were, and as we see now, they're still not ready. Those people aren't ready to make that leap and that jump into the podcast world. And I was going into it kind of that mentality. If it happens, that would be awesome, but I don't think they are ready mentally for it.
Well, I don't think they understand it.
No.
And that became clear in the meeting when we had our meeting. So we get this pitch together like a PowerPoint presentation, and I look up like all these statistics about podcasting and really sell the idea of podcasting and talk about, the way that sponsors have found a home in podcasting. It's not typically the traditional radio commercial that you hear, like a 30 or 60-second spot. There's a lot of live reads from the host. And to me, that endears the product more to the podcast listener when you hear the host talking about it. And 9 times out of 10, I don't skip those. But if I hear a pre-produced typical radio commercial come on, I usually skip through those. But as a listener, if it's the host, it's kind of part of the show. And and Tell 'em Steve Dave is a prime example. They just make it part of the show. And it's kind of an old entertainment, old school radio way of advertising. So we explain all that. We give all these statistics. And this guy, he's an older guy.
Right.
And we get in this meeting, and he comes in, and he pulls out his Macintosh laptop from 1988. And as we're talking, as we're both kind of giving our side of the pitch, he's constantly typing the whole time. And you, like me, at one point thought he was just doing something else.
Right.
Like he's not even paying attention.
Yeah.
Turns out he was basically like a court reporter, like typing everything that we said.
Yeah.
And so, we play a little bit of our show. We talk about successful podcasts. We talk about advertising. We talk about the future. We talk about how, these like Pandora and iTunes radio or Apple Radio, Spotify, all these are becoming more and more accessible in cars, not just with an auxiliary port where you run it from your phone, but you're actually starting to get smart cars with built-in Wi-Fi. And once that happens, my thing with him was once you start getting Wi-Fi in cars, and again, it would take, you got 7 to 10 years before everybody has the screen and Wi-Fi in their cars. Right. We're still a little bit of ways away. But, why not get on board now instead of being behind the curve, which radio always has a problem with. Radio is always behind the curve of technology. It's just a consistent foil to terrestrial radio. They're always behind the curve. I mean, up until within the last 6 years, their rating system is so archaic, it's unbelievable. Like, their rating systems really were the paper diaries that they would send out to people, ask them to write down everything they would listen to on the radio and how long they listened to it. They would write it down in a journal and then mail it back to Arbitron.
Wow.
That's how radio did ratings up until like 6 years ago. And then you finally started getting the people meters. And the people meter is just something you put in your pocket, and then it monitors whatever you listen to, and then you mail it back.
Even then, using actual mail is still pretty archaic.
Yeah. Oh, I think now there's probably like a download. Yeah. You maybe plug it in and they download the info. But 6 years, that technology was readily available before 6 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
And they were still doing, up until 6 years ago, they were still doing paper diaries. Some markets still do paper diaries.
No, why are they so behind? Is the funding just not there anymore? Do advertisers not see the potential for radio and the future of that?
Because the people making the decisions for radios are always old white men who technology has passed them by, and they're stuck in a certain era.
Deplorables, we'll call them.
There you go. That's a good word. That's a good word. But it's the truth. I remember in 2002, I was making the case to put some of the early 90s stuff on classic rock stations. I was trying to make that case. I was like, they would play the Guns N' Roses stuff from that era, but they wouldn't play Stone Temple Pilots. They wouldn't play Pearl Jam. They wouldn't play Nirvana. And I would always use my age as an example. Look, I'm at this age, which is in the middle of who you are. Now I'm slowly kind of getting towards the other end. But at the time, I'm like, I'm right in the middle of your target audience. And I'm telling you, rather than hearing, mandatory Metallica every night, I would rather hear, rather than 5 Metallica songs, what about 2 Metallica songs and a Stone Temple Pilots song? Mm-hmm. And in 2002, I was saying this. And now, finally, over a decade later, these classic rock stations are starting to work Pearl Jam and Stone Temple Pilots into the classic rock rotation. So the higher ups in American radio are always behind technology. They're always behind pop culture. And once again, this became relevant in this meeting you and I had, because when I start talking about bandwidth and downloads, like this guy had a real deer in the headlights look, right?
Oh, yeah, he did for sure. He even had ideas of collaborations of podcast hosts, and I won't say who he recommended.
You could say. You could say. Like it was at the end of the meeting,
right? Yeah.
Or near the end of the meeting, and I'm like, "So, what are your thoughts on this?" And he's like, "Yeah, this sounds great because we got a deal right now with
Donny Osmond."
Yeah,
and you guys could do a podcast with him, maybe produce that and do a collaboration. We're like, the Adam and JP and Donny Osmond show. I like that.
That would work. I'm sure there's an audience for a Donny Osmond podcast.
Honestly, I'm sure he has many more followers than we do right now. That's fine.
And truthfully, at that point, like I would have easily produced a Donny Osmond podcast. But
that wasn't the point of that meeting.
But no, what also part of the pitch was, look, we're in Nashville, so between Nashville and Atlanta, you have a lot of access to known names that could host podcasts.
I think the way that came about, I think Donny Osmond expressed to him some interest to do his own podcast, maybe? Is that what happened?
I don't know.
I think that's what it seemed. Maybe it seemed like.
All I remember is Like, yeah, Donny Osmond.
I think they said Donny Osmond was in the works for a podcast. Maybe he saw us as veteran in that kind of way, seasoned podcasters, and put Donny Osmond. That's kind of a funny idea for a sitcom.
Yeah.
Like, some old music star comes with podcasters, and it'd be funny to watch.
Right.
Not to listen to.
Yeah. That would be pretty funny to watch, though.
Yeah.
You definitely want to put that on YouTube.
Yeah.
So there we are. And I even explained, I remember explaining that meeting. When you and I started doing this, it was a hobby. Or, this will be fun. This will be fun to do. Little did I know, almost 6 years ago, that I was, getting involved in what would be a major media source of the future. I mean, I didn't even realize that at the time. But as we were doing it, and I would study podcasting and, and that was another thing we talked about. Like, everything is on demand now. Everything is, Netflix and, Hulu. And, you want it when you want it, not on anybody else's schedule, which was part of the pitch that we made to him. And we sat there for like an hour and a half maybe.
Yeah, around that.
And did this whole thing. And
had a full slideshow, like the printed out, the whole presentation of it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, their logo, our logo, all this fantastic stuff. But part of my pitch was, let us, as, being guys that have done a podcast for X number of years, and truthfully, I've studied this more than I've studied radio over the last 6 years. Let us help you guys be the company that bridges the gap between terrestrial radio and podcasting. You could be that company. Imagine if your stock was worth more than a cup of coffee at a convenience store.
Imagine the possibilities.
Imagine when the stockholders see that you are making an investment in the future of media, how they'll react to that, rather than just shoveling out another, 60-year-old radio host that you have under contract on some sort of syndicated weekend show. It really... Yeah, I didn't realize how much it fell on deaf ears at the time, because as soon as I got home that night, I got an email from him thanking us again. And, hey, can you send me a copy of the presentation? So I sent that out, sent it to his secretary. And we just kind of sit back and waited for a response.
Yeah.
That didn't happen. And, I mean, I guess we've had like probably 3 emails since then, but still, I mean, it's nowhere close to... Hey, let's do something like this.
What it boils down to in my eyes is they still assume when they hear the term podcasters or podcasting or podcast, they think 2 guys in a basement with USB microphones that have no idea what they're doing.
Right.
Rambling about nothing with terrible quality shows and no structure.
Because if you remember, the very first thing this guy said to us was like, hey, my question was, what do you know about podcasting? And his response was, well, officially, our company doesn't have an opinion on podcasting. And I'm thinking, you are a major media company.
Not just that, but a major player in the game of that company.
Right. But still, like, we got out of that, and, like, I was so proud because, and I guess that stemmed from, even if nothing becomes of this, what an experience for Adam and I to have.
Yeah, that was a big step. That was a big deal.
Yeah. To be in a, you can't, that sort of experience is, you can't put a price tag on.
Right.
You can't go to school and be educated on how you react in a meeting like that. Because, we didn't know what he was going to ask.
No idea.
And he did ask some questions at the end and even went back through his, Macintosh notes and asked us some things. And it was very pleasant. It wasn't bad. I mean, but apparently nothing's going to become of that. Mm-hmm. I don't think.
No. No.
I've been surprised before, but I'm pretty sure he's completely forgotten about that meeting, which is fine. Because what that allowed us to do was to go to United Stations. Mm-hmm. And
so we are using names, okay?
I'll use United Stations because we've worked with them. We actually have a history with them.
Right.
So we go to United Stations, which is just a syndication company. And just a few weeks later, you and I met with the head of programming for United Stations. Yeah. And we met in a hotel in Nashville. And, I had a fantastic conversation. Mm-hmm. And this guy got podcasting.
Yeah.
Like he understood where, what it meant today and what it meant for the future.
Informative, a very constructive criticism that we both used,
right.
I would say.
Yes, absolutely, because it was evident that before this meeting, he had gone and listened to us knew what we wanted to do.
Right.
And so we said, well, how do we test the waters? And then in a follow-up conversation I had on the phone with him, he basically, asked me, how do you want to test the waters for this? And I said, let us do the summer movie special that we talked about. And, that gets a name out there. That gets us doing something for you guys. And that's how the Adam and JP summer movie special came about, which was successful.
It was, yeah.
I mean, we launched that Memorial Day of last year. And there were two things I took away from that. You can bridge the gap between podcasting and radio. Because when we had to go back and do recuts, if you remember, because we cut a lot. We recorded a lot for that show.
Yeah.
And when we had to go back and do recuts, it was because they wanted more of what our podcast was
the banter we had, we had pre-scripted things to say and to do that, but what they liked and enjoyed was just the natural banter back and forth,
right?
Not the pre-scripted things we had,
right? And then the other thing I took away from that, and it's been like ringing around in my head since then, and that was who are Adam and JP?
Yeah,
like you call your show the Adam and JP show, and if I know you, that's cool, but if I don't know you, and seeing the Adam and JP show brings me to your show, which is, I mean,
it physically blew us back.
Yeah, but knowing that, we created that name for a radio show, and he understood that. But he's absolutely right. He was absolutely right. Who are Adam and JP? You don't know. I mean, at this point, we have a small fan base. They know. But if you're trying to make yourself appealing to a larger, more mainstream audience, who are these guys? I don't know. I'm not going to listen to the show. And so that kind of stuck with us. And then another thing that brought up was, how long should a podcast be? And we're comfortable with doing an hour, unless it's, we're back from vacation, it's an hour and a half, like last week. But an hour is kind of where I'm comfortable doing a show. A little less than an hour maybe, a little more than an hour, but around an hour. Because I feel like, and this is just my personal opinion, that if someone likes your show, and I'm speaking from experience with other shows that I listen to, even if I can't sit down and listen to the entire hour at one time while I'm driving or whatnot, I'll come back to it and finish it. It may take me 2 runs. It may take me 2 days to go out and running or whatever. But I'll finish that episode. It's rare that if I've vested myself in a show that I don't finish an episode of that show. And just like our show, The Nerdist, WTF, Fat Man on Batman, Stuff You Should Know, any of these podcasts that you can name, some shows are better than others. I mean, it's just the nature of what you're doing. It's just the nature of entertainment. It's the nature of art. Like it's some episodes of Saturday Night Live are better than other episodes of Saturday Night Live.
That's the way it works.
So it's no slight on the quality of the show, but he really felt like the shorter the better, which is true in radio. I will say that's always true. I mean, I've always believed, since I've tried to be a radio personality, I didn't get it in the early days, but as I went along, the shorter the better. If a joke's funny in 2 minutes, if a bit's funny in 2 minutes, it's funnier in 45 seconds, and you can shorten it down. But I contend in podcasting that if you can get someone invested in your show, then you can give them an hour episode, and they will listen to that and stick with you until they finish that episode. His research showed that people wanted smaller, less minutes in an episode content for podcast. And that is where you got Adam and I doing a 10-minute show last summer.
That's true.
I've
almost forgot about that.
Yeah.
The AJP hangover. Yeah, the hangover.
Yeah, the pop culture hangover.
Yeah.
Was just us, testing that theory, like seeing, and two, to give them something. Oh, this is what it would sound like if we produced a 10-minute, daily, weekly, whatever podcast. This is what Adam and I sound like in 10 minutes. So we did the summer movie special last year, and that door is still open to do other things. In the last year or so, like the right thing hasn't come along, but we're still that door is still open to either, work for them doing podcast or help them do, create podcast or whatever. That door hasn't closed. Whereas I feel like the other door
pretty much
wasn't slammed in our face, but was like when we left that building was quietly closed behind us.
Yeah. I just think the lack of knowledge on their end.
Right. You're right. And that's the difference in the first guy that we talked to and then the second guy we talked to is just general knowledge of the medium. But one thing that has been, kicked around and advice that we've yet to take was calling it the Adam and JP show. So even though the show, I guess it's going to change a little bit.
Yeah.
It's still going to be me and you.
Yes.
Doing this.
That will still happen.
Like, that's not going anywhere.
Right.
Like, it's still going to be twice a week. Mm-hmm. But I think it's fair to say that the Adam and JP show is going away.
You could say it again for a sound clip.
The Adam and JP show is over.
Here you go. We should play that as a teaser for this week's episode.
But it's not over. I mean, we're not going anywhere.
Well, I mean, yeah.
We're still going to do this the exact same way.
Right.
It's still going to be me and you.
But can we talk about the structure change at least? What we've
talking about the stuff that we love. But we're still going to talk about the stuff that we love.
Without a doubt, yeah. But we've done some personal research, quite in-depth research, and looked at charts and numbers and seen who likes what. And we're going to do the exact same thing we've always done, just in a different method.
Here's what we found. Is that, you want to take a break and then come back and explain
Let's
the future?
do that, yeah.
Okay, all right. We'll take a break. We'll come back, and we'll explain the future of Adam and JP today and tomorrow.
Next.
10, 9, 8...
The White Rocket Podcast, hosted by Van Allen Plexico, covering the entire universe of popular culture, movies, TV, books, comics, music, and more, with interviews, convention panels, discussions about current and classical works, and much more. The White Rocket Podcast. It's one long conversation with a variety of guests about the best of popular culture.
Welcome back to the couch with Adam and JP.
Is that what it's called now?
No. Where do we leave? Okay, so we're gonna
the information and the numbers the research we both did separately but brought together had the exact same end result. I thought that was kind of cool.
That was kind of cool. Uh-huh. Is that when we went off and did independent study basically?
Yeah.
And when we got together, we both came up with the same things. Like this is what I have found, and I'm like, well, that's exactly what I think. And here's what we think. I think early on, and for the first few years, what got us through podcasting was grabbing the internet and just going through the headlines.
Yeah.
And our culture, comic culture, which we love, and pop culture. I think for me personally, on a personal note, that is not as satisfying as it used to be.
No.
And
I don't think it is for listeners as well.
Exactly.
I mean, like I said off air to you, what we did this past week on the last Gamers Corner, the last one ever, I'll say that.
Maybe.
We spoke of the Nintendo Switch and the new, the new things about that, the new details about it, the new games coming out for the Nintendo Switch. Now, odds are, if you are a major video game fan and you even care about that news at all, and you are technically inclined enough to find our show, to download it, to listen to it, odds are you already know everything I just told you about the Nintendo Switch.
Right.
So in the long run, what is the point of me regurgitating news stories to you, the listener, that you've already heard and read dozens of times online? So what's the point of a news story? Just being rehashed.
There is some, I think there is some fun in, months. Well, you're totally right with we're not bringing anything new to the table.
Yeah.
Because it's, by the time we say it, it's already old information.
Because we, of course, we didn't make that news ourselves. We read that from a different news source as well.
Right.
That the listener can just as easily find themselves, and probably already has before they hear us.
Right.
That's how I see it.
You're right. I mean, I can't argue with that. That's what I said. I was like, but you're right. But I think there is some fun and this is just for me personally. Whenever you and I see the same movie and we critique that movie, I think that has a little more staying power than doing headlines of the week. Yeah,
and there's we spoke of a timestamp to that, where you have just a broad example of like a Kevin Smith podcast or a Chris Hardwick, the Nerdist podcast. you go back and listen to a show from 6 months ago, it's just as relevant then as it is now.
Right.
Our show 6 months ago was talking about Suicide Squad, and that was coming up, and what we thought of Suicide Squad. And if you listen to that now, odds are if you're a fan of this culture, you've seen that, and you have your own opinion based off of that, so that's kind of irrelevant. But a show like a Nerdist or a Kevin Smith, it's evergreen, as you call it.
Right. And the only fun in going back is like if you went back and listened to the episode right after we saw Suicide Squad, you can hear what we thought about the movie with fresh eyes and compare it to your thoughts. Either when you saw it or to go back and listen to that, with several months removed. Did you like it more? Maybe you don't like it as much. So I think there's pieces that we do that is fantastic. And honestly, I like and I know that what seems to be the biggest draw to our show is just you and I, not off the cuff, well, yeah, kind of off the cuff conversation. Just the conversation that we have, not us going through the headlines on comic book resources. So where does that leave us? What do we do? Because we know we want to continue doing a podcast, but like I said, like I told you, I think on our 100th episode, I'm only going to keep doing it while it's still fun. It still remains fun, but it's not just reading the news and making comments on comic book culture stories isn't as fulfilling as I want it to be. So we're going to keep doing a show, but we are going to change it up a little bit. Maybe I guess it's fair to say in the future, probably starting next week.
Yeah.
And it will still be the Adam and JP show next week.
For now it is, yeah.
We're going to kind of hone in on one thing and talk about that as opposed to. So I think what you can expect going forward is show starts. We have the conversations that we've always had at the beginning of the show, like something that happened to Adam, something that happened to me, something that that caught our attention, like a commercial or something like that. You're still going to get that kind of, that kind of current discussion. But like you said, a story in your life is a story in your life. Whether you're telling it today, when it happened yesterday, or you're telling it 5 years from now, it's still a story that kind of gives it that kind of evergreen feeling to it. And then we're just going to kind of open up the floodgates and see what Adam and I want to talk. We've got stuff that we're going to talk about.
That's what's crazy about it now. We have a schedule. I mean, we're going to have weeks out. I can tell you what the topic of the show will be 3 months from now.
Right.
That's a cool idea to me. It's a good concept.
It really is.
Yeah.
And so, it's going to open up new avenues of conversation, I think. Mm-hmm. And because opinion's opinion. Everybody has one. So you can, you'll get a chance to, I guess, hear more opinion-based stuff from us as opposed to, headlines. Mm-hmm. Which, and again, I mean, stuff, like we said, like we're going to talk about this today. I mean, stuff's going to happen that we're going to talk about. Mm-hmm. Like when the new Guardians of the Galaxy trailer comes out, we'll talk about it because that caught our attention. But as far as like forcing ourselves to, because my least favorite stuff to record is when I just have bullet points of headlines in front of me. My most favorite stuff to record, if that's grammatically correct.
Meh.
Most favorite?
Favorite.
My favorite?
Favoritist? Favoriter?
The thing I enjoy most when we record is when you and I get into a discussion about something. And I think what we're going to do going forward is have more conversations rather than I read a headline. Oh, well, there's a new Captain Marvel movie coming out.
Pat?
What do you think, Adam?
Goes over to me, Pat Robertson.
Issue number 1. Harley Quinn. Overrated? Adam. So that's our plan.
I think it's a good idea.
We'll see how it goes.
I'm not just saying it's a sellout move, but if you look at every single the top 20 podcasts in the world today, they follow a certain structure. And I believe, I'm not saying we're doing that because they're popular, but because they're popular for a reason, and there's a better structure to that. It's more natural. It is always listenable, no matter how old it is. I mean, if you go back to our shows 4 years ago, it A, would be embarrassing to hear, and B, it wouldn't be very entertaining whatsoever because it's so topical and so timely. But if you have this structure, a show 4 years old isn't so bad. It's the same content, it's a different time.
Well,
that's what I see. I mean, it broadens the catalog for new people finding our show can go back and listen to the whole catalog and not feel left out. Where now there's kind of like a a grounds level, like a grassroots. I'm sure if people have been here since day one, it's fun to see the show grow and things that happen. Stories we talked about from 3 years ago come back up, and that's fun.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I'm going to kind of convey it to a World of Warcraft thing. I mean, the old school fans of WoW love they've been playing for 12 years. But if you are now 15 years old and you were 3 years old when the game came out, you're now of age to play that game, and you hop on, it's way too late in the game because the things that have happened before you have no relevance to you.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a very good point.
We are the WoW of podcasting.
That's what we're going to go with. I'm looking forward to this.
Yeah, me too.
Because I've, not just hosting a podcast, but as a listener to podcast, like I've said before, and not to rehash stuff that we've talked about, like when we started doing this, I did not listen to podcasts.
No.
Like my first exposure to podcast was sitting down and recording one with you. And then that prompted me to start finding stuff to listen to online. And as I've grown as a listener as well as a creator, I just have found the same things that you mentioned. And that is the bullet point stuff is fine for the moment, but I want to do more. Like I want to see what we can get into and have discussions about. Like, okay, should we say what's coming up?
Sure.
Do you want to do that?
You at least give it 2 or 3 out.
Like next week, and we figure because what we're going to do going forward is on the Friday show, something like it's possible a subject will start and then it will be continued on the Tuesday show.
If it deserves two shows.
Deserves 2 shows. And we feel that our first, and this will give you a great idea of where we're going to go with this. We're going to focus on, I've just got it down as the Death of the Action Star, part 1 and 2.
Right, yeah.
And that's going to be next Friday and the following Tuesday. And that will be us basically kind of researching like action movies and
this culture of in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. You had Steven Seagal's, Schwarzenegger, Sly Stallone, all these people. A mass majority of these action stars that were known just for action movies and made a good career out of it. But now it's gone,
right?
And that's just it's cool to me.
And the way these movies are made now, as opposed to, they don't. And it's not just an old guy. Well, they made movies better in my day.
Yeah,
they don't make a movie like Lethal Weapon now, which was an action buddy cop movie, but had hints of humor in it. And it just seems like, and what I right at the top of my head right now is Chips, because I just saw the trailer for Chips. And even though I think that's what they want to be, that movie wants to be, it just looks like another comedy.
Yeah.
In the vein of Starsky and Hutch.
It's almost like a parody of it, really.
Right.
That seriousness, that action seriousness can't happen anymore.
Right. And so we're gonna look at the highlights and maybe find out why that doesn't happen anymore.
There are no legitimate action stars now. I mean, you even thought of maybe Vin Diesel, but he's the voice of Groot.
Yeah.
And Sly Stallone, Schwarzenegger weren't doing children's movie voice characters back then.
Right.
They're known for strictly rated R action movies.
Right. So that will be next Friday and the following Tuesday. And then we're going to do, we're going to kind of look at Groundhog Day, the movie.
Yeah, because it's around Groundhog Day.
Groundhog Day is coming up.
And the idea of time-lapse movies and time-lapse in cinema.
Right.
And Placid have used that in its past.
Yeah, that kind of trope of getting caught in a time loop.
Yeah.
And, where it was used correctly and maybe incorrectly. And then we got a sports, not a sports theme show. I don't think I even want to say it because
no, say it because it's the week of the Super Bowl. That's right.
The week of the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
We're going to go through some of our favorite football movies.
Yeah.
But don't run off.
No, there's nothing wrong with that.
Because we're talking about Little Giants.
No. I love, I borderline worship the character of the Incredible Hulk, but I love Little Giants.
Right.
Nothing wrong with that.
So it's not going to be sports talk,
Yeah.
but since it is Super Bowl week, there's a lot of football movies out there. So we thought Adam and I, the week before that, will watch some football movies and just kind of talk about it.
Little Giants has Ed O'Neill as the main villain, a.k.a. Al Bundy. If that's not the Adam and JP show at its essence, I don't know what is.
You're absolutely right. And then the Tuesday after that, we're going to do an entire show about the history of The Tonight Show.
Yeah.
Which is something that we've done like the brief history stuff. And where we'll do, 15, 20 minutes about a certain thing. But I am really looking forward to this.
Me too, yeah.
Because I think this is more what I want to do. I want to, be assigned a subject to research and then discuss on this show. But at the same time, and I promise you, what we're not going to lose is the conversation.
Right. That's
and
the point
chemistry.
of doing this is more conversation.
Right. Because I don't want to just talk about Batman and Superman for the next year. I love Batman and Superman.
Yeah.
And there will be plenty of talk about Batman and Superman. But I think we kind of pigeonholed ourselves into, well, unless it's a Marvel or DC or a comic book or, like you saw a science fiction movie this last week and we haven't even talked about it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you saw The Passengers.
That's true. Why didn't we talk about that? I didn't think about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, so we're just kind of, we're not selling out. We're not changing anything.
You have to receive money to sell out.
That's true.
That could happen.
Well, yes, we are coming up with a way, and we have a way that we will announce hopefully around Valentine's Day.
Yes.
Because it's going to take a while to get it going, at least a couple of weeks. We have found a way to make our archived show accessible. And I very much, and you can vouch for this because we've had conversations where we've talked about, is there a way to, we're not trying to get rich, but, there is a cost associated with doing this. There's, we got to pay for the bandwidth, stuff like that. We would like to advertise the show a little bit. So there are costs associated. So is there a way that we can do something to offset that cost? And I've always said, I don't want to charge for the podcast. I don't want, we can have the occasional sponsors. And truthfully, the sponsorships that we have now is the ESO network, which we're not going anywhere. We're staying on the ESO network. They don't know this yet, though.
Oops. We'll tell them before.
Yeah. Before this comes out, I'll give the guys at ESO a heads up.
Yeah.
And they're ESO shows. When you hear the commercials, they're ESO shows. Mm-hmm. And, Outer Limits Comics, we like Outer Limits. We legitimately like that comic store. So we go there. I like your store. We do a show. Can we promote ourselves? So we get to put our stuff in Outer Limits Comics, and then we talk about them on the show. The conventions, Grand Ole Game Room Expo, Southern Fried Game Room Expo, Louisville Arcade Expo, Dragon Con, all these conventions that we talk about, they never pay for that.
No.
We talk about it because we love it.
It's a passion.
Yeah. But if we could monetize like current shows a little bit with sponsorships, I'm totally down for that. It would never encompass the show, but the archived shows that aren't available anywhere, I don't mind monetizing those a little bit because they had their run as free shows. So we have got a way that we will announce in February. The archive shows will be available, and there will be a minor cost attached to it.
Yeah.
So, which is something which has been requested numerous times. Hey, how do we get past 100 episodes back? Well, we found a way to do it.
Here you go.
And so we'll be announcing that by Valentine's Day, right?
Because as we spoke of, every episode that comes out, there is one show being deleted from the actual iTunes feed.
The iTunes feed,
Wow.
right. I think there's a few more on the TuneIn feed and a few more on the iHeart feed.
Wow.
But probably what we will do is use the iTunes feed as a template. And so the only thing available will be what's available on iTunes.
And we do, 2 shows a week. So 100 episodes is not very much at all. It's
No.
less than a year.
Yeah.
This is our 6th year, and there's less than a year's worth of content on the feed right now.
Right. And so we have, a very plentiful archive. Because not only do you have the stuff that you and I have done in this show that has evolved over time, the shows that you and I hosted,
Yeah.
that we, individually, we still have those. We have special shows that we've done. Like the Halloween show is not even available
Wow.
anymore from this past Halloween.
Really?
Because it took up too much space
Really?
for our other shows that were coming out.
Wow.
So I'm like, well, I'm not gonna delete a numerical show. I'll delete the Halloween show.
Wow.
So we have special stuff like that, and that's all. We'll talk about more about that once it's accessible. I'm excited.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
I feel like this is what I need creatively.
Well, I guess when did we even say yet that, the name will be changing?
Yeah, the name will be changing.
Yeah.
We are gonna. That's why we've been joking around. Like the last Adam, it's even though we're not going anywhere.
Right. Yeah.
I'm gonna take to heart the advice that I was given a year ago, and that is, who are Adam and JP?
Yeah. We're no one.
Right. And especially
Honestly.
when you go and start looking through the thousands and thousands of podcasts.
Yeah. Adam and JP would not stick out to you.
No, it wouldn't. And if you know us,
Sure, yeah.
because that's my buddies.
Yeah.
But if if you're somewhere in Wisconsin and you don't know who Adam and JP are, then you would probably skip over that. Well, we want to name the show something that might draw those people in. Because not that, we seek fame or fortune or internet notoriety. I think I'm safe in saying that neither one of us pursue any of that. We do this for the fun of doing it and the art. But it's like anything you create, if you're putting it out there for people to see.
You want more people to see it or hear it.
Why not get as many people to, then that's just more feedback that you get. So yeah, we will be renaming, rebranding the show. But here's what you don't have to worry about. The podcast feed will not change. It will all stay. Everything is going to stay exactly where it's at.
The website stays the same.
The website will stay the same.
Social media,
because our names. It's going to be with Adam and JP or an Adam and JP show. So Facebook, Twitter, the website, the feeds on iTunes and iHeartRadio. Because I'm not blowing the show up. I refuse to do that. Like, it has taken too long to get the following that we have. I'm not going to risk losing that a second time in the lifespan of this show.
Right.
We did that once, and that was hard to rebuild. I mean, that sucked.
Mm-hmm. It was painful.
So we're not doing that. Like anything that we do, whatever name we choose, whatever rebranding we do, will be softly branded with Adam and JP. And, we're not changing our names.
No,
so,
not yet.
so, yeah, everything will stay the same as far as like social media and the web content. So what do you think about all this?
I'm excited. I wouldn't say a long time coming, but I think we didn't know it, but it should have been a long time coming. I mean, like we said last year, whenever the first higher up said the name Adam and JP, what does that mean? If I didn't know you guys, I wouldn't know what that meant, and that meant a lot when he said that. It's a good point we never thought of before. So I think it should have happened a long time ago. Like you said before, it worked on the radio as Adam and JP. Think of a Free Beer and Hot Wings, a Big D and Bubba, Tom and
Bob and Tom.
Bob and Tom, yeah. No one knows.
John Boy and Billy.
No, no one knows. If you never heard of that show before and you saw a list of things and you saw Bob and Tom, you would honestly have no idea what that meant. But somehow on the radio, with that much exposure, when you're on that many stations, you don't have to know who they are because it's on your car when you turn it on.
Right.
But a podcast is different. You have to find us. We don't come to you.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point. That's a really good point.
It's all about the name.
So here's what I would be curious. As a podcast listener, and please, if first of all, if I'm going to beg you to do something, it's go and rate and review the show, first and foremost.
Yeah.
But if you are a longtime podcast listener, or even maybe new podcast listeners are better to answer this. But if you're just a podcast listener in general, when you look at the iTunes or Google Play, wherever you get your podcast, and you start listening to a new show, what draws you to that show? Is it the name? Well, I know it's probably the host with most shows. Like if you know the person hosting the show, you're going to listen. But if you don't know the host, is it the name? Is it an intriguing name? Or do you want what the podcast is in the name? Does that make sense what I'm asking?
Yeah. What gets you intrigued in the first place, what you mean before.
Right.
Yeah.
Is it a fun-sounding podcasty name in a category that you enjoy? Or is it, hey, I know exactly what the show is in the name. That's what draws me in. That's the kind of feedback I want. I'm curious. And tweet us at Adam and JP or send us an email, AJP at Adam and JP. I'm curious as a podcast listener, what do you look for when you scroll through and you're not familiar with the host, what draws you in by the title?
Yeah, catchy name or one that you know what this show is based on the name alone.
Right. Like if you see Pop Culture Happy Hour by NPR, well, I know exactly what that is. But if you see, Wait, Don't Tell Me, I don't know what that is.
No idea. But it's
another
still,
NPR show.
It's still one of the top shows right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So what it is that draws you in? Is it something fun? In a category that if it's in the comedy category, then you assume they're going to at least try to be remotely funny. Oh, maybe that's a name.
Ooh, remotely funny.
Remotely funny. Welcome to Remotely Funny with Adam and JP.
Yeah, I'm sure it's taken.
Can we talk about the name that you said? Or do you not want to do that?
No, yeah, you do that. Yeah. Because it's not for us.
Like, you can't name your show this. And if you do name your show this, you owe Adam a royalty check.
Yeah.
Because you came up with the perfect name that we can't use.
I know. I think it's a very good podcast name that someone should use, but hopefully no one I know will use it. And it can't be for us because it doesn't really fit what we're trying to do. And we're trying to come up with a play on words or an oxymoron or some kind of deal. And just the term and the title of a podcast being Classless Chaps came to my head. I like Classless Chaps.
I like Classless Chaps, too. I almost want to go with that.
Classless Chaps.
I mean, you could say that we're classless chaps.
That's true, yeah.
We have no class,
That's
and
true.
we are chaps.
That's true. That's funny. I think it's funny.
I also like the name Two Dopey White Guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Works as well.
Or just Dopey White Guys.
Yeah.
I kind of like that name.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're really struggling with, do we want to put pop culture in the name?
Yeah.
Or do we want to go with...
Do you go subliminal, like kind of you do under the radar there, and maybe like an inside joke? The perfect thing is it's got to be informative, but only informative to people who know what it is.
Right.
It's got that mystique for people who don't know. You don't want to have a Ghostbusters or a Star Wars reference. Therefore, if you hate Ghostbusters or Star Wars, you won't listen to it. But if it sounds mysterious enough or you're intrigued to listen to it, but it's got that hidden meaning for fans, that's the perfect amalgamation there, if we can find that.
I think so, too.
If that can be found.
Which we're struggling.
It's true.
I'll just be honest.
Yeah.
We're having a hard time coming up with a new name.
Yeah.
Because to me, this is it.
Yeah.
Like, I am not doing this again. Like, if we I want a name, and then that's what we go with.
Yeah.
Until we stop doing
I think
this.
we've had different podcasts along 6 years, our shows together, and it's been a combination of 5 words. Think about it.
That's true.
Yeah.
And I don't want to get away from
We've had
it being very short.
In 6 years, we've had 5 different words used across 2 podcasts. 5 words.
Yep.
And now we've got to branch out and do a totally different thing.
Yeah. Because the other shows were always easy to name. Like Collection Connection, that was easy.
Bam.
8-Bit Adam,
Bam.
That was easy. This Must Be Pop, that
Bam.
was easy.
Bam.
I'm Not Famous,
Bam.
I love that name.
Yeah.
Deadheads, when we did the Walking Dead thing for a few weeks,
Yeah.
that seemed perfect. Which was the most downloaded show we've done.
Really?
As far as like weekly downloads.
Yeah. Wow. What happened there?
I got tired, man.
Yeah.
After a long week, it's hard to record a show on Sunday night after The Walking Dead.
Right.
Which is where we would do it. And it just, if we could ever get to a point to where we were making enough money, where we could really concentrate on content creating, that would be the ultimate to me. That would be, that's a win. That's when we could start doing more stuff.
Oh, yeah.
That's when we could do YouTube videos and more podcast and, blog on the website and that sort of stuff. I just can't now.
There's no time. I don't have time at all.
I just can't.
No.
That's the sad reality that set in over the last few years. I can't do as much as I want to do. I can't. I just don't have the stamina to be up, 20 hours.
Yeah.
And so, but maybe one day we'll get there. Who knows?
Yeah, we'll see.
Because that's my goal. If people said, "Hey, what's your goal in podcasting?" What would be successful for you? And it would be to be in a place where I can do as much content as I have in my head. Because there's a ton of content in my head. It's just not feasible to do it all right now. I can't.
Agreed.
But I don't know. Maybe we'll get there one day.
Yeah, eventually.
So yeah, let us know. Let us know what you look for in podcast names when you're trying to find a new podcast.
I'm not saying we won't use it, but if you have a name, throw it over.
Yeah, and if we do decide to go with it, we'll give you credit, but that's all you get.
That is all.
You know that right now.
Right.
If we choose your name, if you give us something perfect, we're just going to say on the first episode, "Hey, this is who came up with the name."
Yeah.
You're not getting anything after that.
And that's it.
You're by sending us a name suggestion now, you're agreeing to never being rewarded monetarily for that. Because I'm not going to get into that mess.
That's the Audible contract. There you go.
Yeah, Audible contracts.
Ooh.
I like the name Audible. Audible.
Ooh. We'll do this off air.
Audible contracts. That sounds enticing. And now and always, you can check us out online, adamandjp.com.
Yeah, facebook.com/AdamandJP and on Twitter at AdamandJP as well.
Before we go, I want to remind you, our buddy Adam Buttry from Buttry.design. Fantastic. Adam has...
Oh, man.
It's funny. I've watched Adam grow up as an artist.
No, you have, yeah.
I remember his early stuff that was good. And then to see him, hone his craft and blossom into the artist / illustrator that he is today is amazing. Buttery.design. You can go to that website, or you can go to adamandjp.com. Right there on the homepage are a few examples, and then there's a whole tab you can hit at the top of the page and see a whole gallery of Adam's work from Buttery.design, his fan art. I think my favorite piece is his Stranger Things piece.
Oh, that's a good one.
That black and white. Well, it's not black and white. There's more in there.
Yeah.
But it's a minimal piece.
Really good.
I love that Stranger Things piece.
Mm-hmm.
You can see that at adamandjp.com. I'm Jay Patrick. That's Adam.
This is the Adam and JP Show.
For now.
Face Sealer.
This has been a production of the Adam and JP family of on-demand talk radio.
AdamandJP.com.
Right now.
This has been a broadcast of the ESO Network, your station for all things geek, classic, current, and beyond. Be part of the crew at ESONetwork.com.